Hey guys, tonight we drift across an ocean ruled not by compasses or charts, but by memory stars and the rhythm of waves. You're standing barefoot on woven planks, the scent of salt tangling with the hush of dusk. There's no motor, no GPS, just a double-hulled canoe slicing quietly across the Pacific under a quilt of unfamiliar constellations. You squint upward, and something inside you adjusts, something ancient. You're about to learn how some of the greatest navigators in human history crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without getting lost, eaten, or existentially defeated. Honestly, you probably won't survive this, at least not without accidentally Googling what is celestial navigation at 2 a.m. and going down a rabbit hole deeper than the Mariana Trench. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always love knowing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lie on your back in the canoe and let your gaze lock onto the night sky. There are no city lights out here, no planes overhead, just stars, bright and ancient, scattered across the dark like the spilled thoughts of gods. Polynesian navigators, wayfinders they're called, knew this sky intimately, not as a pretty distraction, but as a map. Each star you see, it rises and sets at a specific point along the horizon. By memorizing where certain stars come up and go down, wayfinders could steer across open ocean with astonishing precision. They use something called a star compass, not an object, but a mental framework. You hold it in your head, like a glowing dial, with cardinal points, not just north, south, east, and west, but subdivided by dozens of star lines. Tonight, your guide is the star Sirius, called Taurua by Polynesian navigators. You watch it rise over the bow of the canoe and know we're sailing east. You let that settle in. Your ancestors didn't invent calculus, but they were using stellar azimuths centuries before it was cool. You shift slightly, and the canoe creaks softly beneath you. The entire vessel becomes part of the navigation system. There's no steering wheel, just your body, the stars, and a rhythm passed from one navigator to the next through chant, gesture, and breath. But here's the kicker. There's no one universal Polynesian sky map. Different islands had different constellations. Some navigators divided the horizon into 32 named points. Others used 36. Some even recognized stars that modern astronomy barely bothers with, faint glimmers just above the threshold of human vision. Scientists still argue whether these divisions were standardized or entirely personal. But one thing's certain. It worked. You close your eyes for a moment. Try to imagine memorizing hundreds of stars and their rising and setting positions. Not for trivia night, for survival. Miss a star line, and you miss an island. Miss an island and, well, hope you enjoy dehydrated fish for the rest of eternity. As you doze, the canoe rocks gently beneath you. It feels coordinated, like the boat knows what it's doing. That's no accident. These vessels were designed not just to float, but to talk, to communicate wave patterns, speed, and subtle shifts in direction through their movement. You don't just ride the canoe, you feel it. A whisper of wind brushes your cheek, and your gaze returns to the sky. Polaris, the North Star, is too far north to help you. Here you rely on stars like Aldebaran, Betelgeuse, and the Southern Cross. They paint corridors across the ocean, shimmering pathways only visible to those who know how to look. You try to imagine what it must have felt like, leaving the sight of land, watching your home disappear behind the horizon, and trusting that somewhere ahead, days or weeks away, another island waits. You feel the stars become more than lights. They become old friends. And yet, there's something strangely comforting about this. No high tech, no batteries to die, no signal to lose. Just you, the sky, and the shared knowledge of your ancestors embedded like coral in your bones. You're not lost. You're connected. But here's a quirky tidbit. Wayfinders sometimes didn't learn from books or schools. They learned by dreaming. Seriously. Some traditions speak of navigation, knowledge passed through dreams, visions of routes, signs, and stars that guided them in waking life. Scientists still argue whether this was metaphor or actual neurocognitive processing. Some even speculate these dreams were a culturally reinforced memory aid. Your fingers trail over the side of the canoe, skimming warm water. You smile. You're drifting between stars and stories. And we've only just begun. The stars have your direction, but now it's time to listen with your body. You sit cross-legged, near the center of the canoe, feeling the ocean's breath beneath you. It isn't random. The waves come in slow, disciplined pulses, like a language. You close your eyes. Try again. This time, you don't just feel the canoe rising and falling. You start to notice patterns. Polynesian navigators read the ocean swell like a book. No, not by looking at it, by feeling it. You become the sensor. The boat creaks underfoot, lifting from the left in a slow, persistent rhythm. That's a long-distance swell, maybe from a storm hundreds of miles away. It hums through the ocean like a whisper from a giant. Then a sharper, choppier rhythm bumps you from the right. Wind waves. They're more local, noisy, and impatient. To a wayfinder, this orchestra of swells provides orientation. One pulse keeps you aligned, another warns of weather ahead. Imagine having Google Maps vibrate through your spine. That's what this feels like. You lean your head against the wood of the canoe. The warmth of the sun still lingers there, but underneath, the vibrations are constant. This isn't a quiet sea. It's alive with invisible motion. Some wave trains stretch for thousands of miles without breaking. Scientists call them swell refraction patterns, and they wrap around islands in predictable ways. Polynesian navigators didn't just know that, they felt it. Quirky fact for you, some navigators could even detect island shadows before seeing land. That's not some poetic metaphor. It's a real phenomenon. When a distant island blocks prevailing swells, it creates an interference pattern in the wave field. The canoe's motion becomes ever so slightly different. It's like sailing into a pocket of stillness shaped by something over the horizon. No land in sight, yet you know it's coming. Now, Here's a little debate to lull you deeper. Scientists still argue whether the detection of swell interference is something teachable or more like an acquired superpower. Can anyone learn it with practice, or does it require the kind of lifelong exposure to ocean rhythms that rewires your brain into a kind of biological sonar? You feel a wave now that doesn't match anything else. It lifts the canoe in a sudden, unexpected roll. You lean slightly, correcting your balance. That, your sleepy brain decides, is the wake of a traveling fish or a nearby island reef, or maybe a curious turtle. You won't know, but your body notes it, and that's what matters. You shift your weight again and begin to mimic what traditional wayfinders might do. You lie face down in the center of the canoe, eyes closed, arms draped over the sides. You feel every roll and bob and tug of the boat. It's like syncing your heartbeat to the oceans. Over time, the boat becomes an extension of you. Or maybe it's the other way around. You start naming swells in your mind. The long swell from the south, call it twee. The jittery cross swell from the east, that's raka. No one told you to do this, but your mind craves language, even out here. Polynesian wayfinders often had their own terms for specific types of waves. An oral tradition held them like family. Swells weren't just water. They were relatives, spirits, warnings. A modern scientist might raise an eyebrow. There's no empirical evidence for wave memory, they'd say. But here's the thing. When you ride the ocean for weeks, you build an internal catalog that no spreadsheet can hold. This isn't about raw data. It's about the rhythm of reality whispering into your bones. There's another shift now. The canoe feels lighter, faster. The swell pattern just changed again. Maybe a current is joining in. And yes, navigators read those too. Not just from watching foam trails or driftwood, but by watching how the swell and current clash. Sometimes they form standing waves. Sometimes they cancel out, and if you're lucky or experienced, you can read them like freeway signs. You reach into the water. It's warm, silky, moving westward. The surface tension slips between your fingers, tickling your skin like the world's most ancient hunch. You withdraw your hand and just breathe. You're riding on the back of something timeless. Somewhere deep in your memory, you remember a line you once read. The ocean is never lost. Only you are. But here, in this boat, under this sky, rocking on this whispering swell, even that feels like a misunderstanding. What if, just maybe, the ocean has always known exactly where you are? You rest a hand against the side of the canoe and realize this isn't just a vessel. It's a floating library, a memory palace carved from breadfruit tree trunks, stitched together with coconut fiber, and coated with generations of whispered knowledge. You're sitting inside something that doesn't merely float. It remembers. Traditional Polynesian canoes, especially the great double-hulled waka or vaka, weren't built for day trips. These were the spacecraft of their age, capable of carrying dozens of people, weeks of supplies, animals, seedlings, even musical instruments, and of course, stories, always stories. You run your fingers along the lashings, each one tight and deliberate. There's no metal here, just cordage and craftsmanship. You think about what it takes to cross thousands of miles without a single nail. Scientists still admire how these canoes were engineered for both speed and stability, with hydrodynamic hulls that could rival modern catamarans in efficiency. Seriously, these boats could go fast, but speed wasn't the point. The real genius was in how they handled open ocean conditions, high swells, variable winds, sudden storms. The canoe flexed. It bent with the water instead of fighting it. You imagine modern yacht designers wincing in envy. Now comes the fringe tidbit. Some oral traditions claim the canoes spoke to their navigators, not metaphorically, literally. Creaks, rhythms, groans, even sudden silences were interpreted as messages. There's one story about a canoe that refused to leave shore until the crew performed a chant they had forgotten. You smirk. Whether superstition or subconscious sensory feedback, it worked. Scientists still debate whether these beliefs served as psychological anchors or were based on real pattern recognition beyond verbal explanation. You shift on the smooth deck. There's a kind of logic embedded in the design, sleeping space arranged by family, food stores buried in the cooler shade of the hull, tools lashed to places that match their use. The canoe is a floating village, and like any village, it carries its own pulse. You watch as someone near the stern checks the steering paddle, massive, curved, worn smooth. On long voyages, they didn't just steer by brute force. They angled the paddles to lean the boat into swell patterns, gliding like dancers in an ocean ballet. It wasn't muscle that mattered, it was timing. You recall a recent museum exhibit you saw? Replicas of traditional canoes, surrounded by glass cases and artificial lighting. They looked still, silent. But here, in the hush of the ocean, the real canoe breathes. You feel its quiet wisdom pressing against your spine. And then there's the human architecture. Navigators weren't alone. The canoe was crewed by families, elders, apprentices, even animals. Each had a role. The youngest might be tasked with watching bird movements or checking for phosphorescence at night. The elders, with voices that creaked more than the hull, passed on song lines, navigational chants that encoded islands, star paths, wave patterns, yes, songs. Your GPS might beep and show a map. A Polynesian navigator would hum. They'd sing a route. One verse for this island chain, another for the reefs you must avoid. A sudden key change might indicate a dangerous current. This was more than oral tradition. It was data compression. In a tune your body remembered long after your conscious mind forgot. You close your eyes and hum. Softly, it's not a real chant, just something your brain invents from fragments of thought and wind. But even that seems to echo off the canoe's ribs, like it's listening. Here's a scientific fact to tuck under your sleep blanket. Studies of brain scans show that musical memory activates deeply rooted neural pathways, especially in nonverbal learners. It's entirely possible that navigational songs helped store vast cognitive maps in ways modern memory techniques are only beginning to replicate. You may not recall the name of that one neighbor, but you can still sing the chorus from a song you haven't heard since middle school. Now imagine your entire knowledge of the Pacific stored that way. You look over the edge of the hull and catch your reflection. It wavers, looks older, saltier, a little wiser. Maybe you're becoming part of the canoe now. And just when you feel like drifting off completely, a small laugh escapes your lips. Because somehow this whole thing, canoes as libraries, songs as maps, wood as wisdom, it's both impossibly romantic and perfectly rational. It's not magic. It's memory wrapped in wood, sung over waves. You lean back, the planks warm beneath your shoulders, and whisper a thank you to the craft that carries you. You're not just a passenger. You're part of the story now. So there you are, floating across the endless blue, trying to keep your sense of direction. And suddenly someone says, just use dead reckoning. You raise an eyebrow. Dead? What now? Dead reckoning, despite sounding like a pirate-themed escape room, is a real technique. And it's both simple and terrifying. In its most basic form, you estimate your current position based on a previously known one, then account for speed, direction, and time. That's it. No GPS, no stars, just math and vibes. In traditional Polynesian navigation, dead reckoning was like second nature. You'd estimate how far you've traveled by watching the waves, feeling the wind, and, get this, counting how long the canoe moved in a certain direction. Some navigators used heartbeat rhythms to estimate time. Others chanted pace songs or used finger-tapping techniques. Your wrist becomes a metronome. Your gut becomes Google Earth. You give it a try, you close your eyes and start counting slowly. 1, 2, 3, imagining how many canoe lengths you've moved. You quickly lose track somewhere around 60 because your brain starts wondering if dolphins ever get bored. Still, the idea sinks in. Here's your science nugget for the night. Dead reckoning is still used in aviation and robotics. Submarines too. When GPS fails, dead reckoning is Plan B. Even Mars rovers use versions of it to guess how far they've rolled since their last signal. So when you're floating out here estimating distance by the sway of the hull, you're actually using a technique so universal it works in space. But let's be honest, it's also wildly fallible. Even experienced wayfinders had to adjust. Currents could throw off estimates, and wind shifts could skew your angle. So the real secret sauce? Layering techniques. Dead reckoning was just one piece of the puzzle. Now here's the quirky bit. Some navigators joked about getting lost on purpose. Why? Because part of the journey was testing your understanding, letting yourself drift slightly off course, then using the signs around you to correct. It wasn't failure. It was recalibration, a test of trust between you and the ocean, and between you and yourself. You can't help but laugh at the modern-day equivalent. Imagine getting lost on a road trip and just telling your passengers, "Oh, I'm recalibrating." Pretty sure they'd recalibrate your playlist to static. Back on the canoe, you reach into a woven pouch and pull out a small carved piece of wood, a personal talisman. Many wayfinders carried these, not for good luck exactly, but for focus. A tactile reminder of home. You press it between your palms and let your breath slow. You think about all the things we overcomplicate today. We want 5 satellite signals and a digital map to tell us where to go. These navigators, They trusted their eyes, their skin, the boat beneath them, and, most importantly, their memory. Now here's where the debate floats in. Some researchers argue that traditional dead reckoning wasn't dead reckoning at all. It was something deeper, a hybrid system so intuitive and responsive, it defies simple definitions. Was it cognition? Was it intuition? Scientists still argue whether these navigators were using unconscious pattern recognition or formal mental models, so fluid we haven't even defined them properly yet. You like that idea? That maybe some skills are too big to fit into tidy academic boxes? You look out over the horizon. The sun is low, gold streaking the ocean like someone spilled honey across the waves. You've traveled, what, 30 nautical miles? 40? There's no mile marker, just you, and a growing sense that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, even if you don't know the coordinates. You remember a navigator's proverb. The path is not under your feet, it's behind your eyes. Yeah, that'll do. The canoe creaks as someone shifts, and you're pulled gently from your thoughts. You've been reckoning this whole time without even realizing it. You glance at the sky, feel the swell, hear the wind in your ear, and somehow, you just know, you're still on course. A shadow passes overhead, sharp against the golden morning sky. You glance up and see a bird, dark wings, graceful gliding, no hint of panic in its flight. It circles once, then heads in a clear, determined line to the west. You follow its path with your eyes. That, right there, is your next clue. Birds weren't just background noise for traditional Polynesian voyages. They were navigational markers, observers, guides. You blink slowly, realizing this isn't just a bird, it's a breadcrumb with wings. Polynesian wayfinders used seabirds like noddies, frigates, and terns to locate islands over the horizon. Why? Because many of these birds don't sleep on the ocean. They feed at sea during the day, but return to land at night. And if you spot one flying with purpose near dawn or dusk, chances are it's heading to or from solid ground. You lean back in the canoe and start scanning the sky. More birds, low-flying ones in groups, a few alone, flying high. The altitude matters. The species matters. Everything means something. A flock of terns flying high might mean you're near a reef system or sandbar. A lone booby at sunrise, flying in a straight westward arc. That could mean you're within 30 or 40 miles of land. And here's your science fact. Research has shown that species like the brown noddy, Anus stolidus, rarely travel more than 40–50 kilometers from nesting grounds during feeding. Polynesian navigators knew this without bar charts or bird trackers. They just watched for generations. There's a joke you remember. Modern sailors have radar. Ancient navigators had feathered radar. You chuckle. Sounds like a punchline, but it's absolutely true. You rise slightly and squint into the sun, trying to spot more flight patterns. You remember stories where entire crews would wake up in silence just to study bird movements at dawn. Not because they were morning people, but because this was sacred information. The birds told you what the ocean couldn't. Here's a fringe tidbit. In some traditions, navigators could name individual birds they'd seen repeatedly. Not metaphorical birds, actual individuals. They'd recognize patterns in how a certain turn swooped or veered or called. Whether or not that's scientifically possible is debatable. Scientists still argue whether navigators could really identify individuals, or if it was just a poetic way of recording behavior. But poetry or not, it worked. You imagine sailing for days with no visible land, and then spotting a single bird flapping its wings against the wind, and knowing that land is near. You can almost feel your heart lift. You glance again at your surroundings. The ocean has changed color slightly, a warmer blue, almost teal. That can be a sign too. Water clarity shifts near islands. Temperature gradients hint at underwater shelves. You swear you just saw a floating branch. Your eyes flick back to the sky. More birds. You reach for your journal. Not that you have one, but it feels like the right thing to do. You want to track their patterns, sketch their shapes, maybe name one after your high school physics teacher who never believed you'd be good at spatial awareness. The canoe rocks gently, and someone nearby murmurs a chant. It's not loud, not showy, just a soft rhythm under their breath, a song of orientation. You listen for words, but you don't need a translation. The intent is clear. Gratitude for the guides with wings. And here's something else to make you smile before drifting off further. Some navigators believed that birds could be messengers from ancestral spirits. If one lingered above your canoe too long, it wasn't just curious, it was checking in. A cosmic welfare check with feathers. You tilt your head, watching one circle once, then glide out of view. You wonder who it was. Then you close your eyes and let the breeze press gently against your cheek. You're somewhere in the Pacific, halfway between memory and mystery, and the sky is full of signs. You'll follow them, quietly, just like they did. You stare down at what looks like a bundle of twigs, shells, and curved lines tied together with coconut fiber, and try not to let your modern brain scream, "What is this chaotic mess?" Because to a traditional navigator, this is the map. This is a stick chart. Crafted by the navigators of the Marshall Islands, these stick charts weren't for the faint of mind. They represented swells, wave interactions, and island positions, not in a literal sense, but abstractly. You squint, turning it slightly. Some of the sticks are curved, others straight. Shells are tied at intersections. It looks like geometry met driftwood and got poetic. You run your fingers gently over the edges. This one's a rebelib, a chart that shows the entire Marshall Islands archipelago. Each shell? That's an island. The sticks? They mark the direction and flow of ocean swells. Some are standard wave directions, others show how waves bend around land masses. To you, it's a puzzle. To them, it was an ocean simulation in fiber and bone. Here's your science fact. These charts accurately depict wave refraction and interference, long before anyone had computers to model such things. The Marshallese wayfinders were intuitively grasping wave physics with nothing but experience and intuition. Some studies have even tried to reverse engineer these charts into modern oceanographic data models. And guess what? The results often line up. But here's the twist. The stick charts weren't brought on voyages. They were studied, memorized, and left behind. Yeah, let that sink in. This isn't your laminated Google map. You don't take the chart, you become the chart. You stare at this spaghetti of symbols until it rewires your brain. And then you go to sea with just that inside your head. You smile. It's like if you spent a weekend staring at a subway map, then tossed it away, and confidently rode the trains blindfolded. Except the subway is trying to drown you. And the quirky tidbit? Some of these charts weren't just for travel, they were also used to test apprentices. Elders would place a chart in front of a student and ask them to trace imaginary voyages with a finger, explaining what each swell meant, which islands were real, and what hazards lay along the way. If the apprentice hesitated, the training continued. The chart was a teacher, a memory maze, a rite of passage. You tilt the stick chart again and imagine the hands that made it. Careful, calloused, threading memory into fiber. You think about all the hours spent watching waves, noting which ones split around reefs or doubled back after storms. No satellites, no sonar, just eyes and time. And here's the debate to lull you even deeper. Scientists still argue whether stick charts qualify as maps by Western standards. Are they symbolic tools or functional charts? Were they standardized or deeply personal? Varying from navigator to navigator, there's no full consensus because the charts were never meant to be decoded by outsiders. They were living tools in a living tradition. The canoe rocks beneath you as you imagine studying one of these at twilight, listening to the ocean whisper beneath the planks. You think of the stick chart like a spell, only powerful when spoken aloud and remembered in muscle, not ink. You stretch out your legs, letting the motion of the canoe mimic the curving lines of the chart. You become aware of each shift in direction, each change in rhythm. Could you track wave directions with just your eyes shut? Not yet. But maybe someday. There's something comforting about it all. This wasn't information hoarded on paper. It was shared, sung, felt. A legacy passed down one swell at a time. And the best part? You don't need to memorize it all now. Just breathe. Let the lines sink in. The ocean remembers. And soon, so will you. You squint at the horizon. There's a cloud. A big one. It's low, pillowy, and kind of sulking. Someone beside you glances at it too, then quietly mutters something. You don't catch the words, but the meaning is clear. It's time to pay attention. In traditional Polynesian navigation, clouds weren't just weather. They were messages. Their color, shape, speed, and behavior all held clues. Reading clouds wasn't some fringe trick. It was essential. And tonight, you learn to read the sky, like it's whispering directly to you. The cloud ahead is darker underneath. That's a sign. Sometimes clouds reflect the color of land or lagoon water below, especially over atolls. If the underbelly is tinged with green or pale turquoise, there might be shallow water beneath. And land, of course, usually follows. You shift slightly, staring harder. Can clouds really reflect an island beneath them? Science says yes. It's a phenomenon called cloud albedo. Modification. Essentially, the color of the ocean's surface or coral reef reflects upward, tinting the clouds directly above. Modern pilots still use this technique when flying over uncharted territory. Still, you feel like a magician squinting for spells. Another cloud catches your eye. This one is towering, tall as a mountain, building into a mushroom of vapor. That's a cumulonimbus. Translation: probably a storm. Polynesian navigators avoided them by reading early cloud formation stages, especially during dawn and dusk when contrast was strongest. That storm might be a day away, but its shape tells you everything you need to know. And here's your quirky tidbit. Some wayfinders believed clouds rested over islands like birds over nests. They described them as tired, still, content clouds sitting low and wide. They'd say, "That one looks lazy, it must be over land." It's poetic, sure, but it's also surprisingly accurate. Scientists still argue whether these descriptions were metaphorical or observational. Did they describe feelings or patterns of air pressure and heat? Maybe both. You stare again. The lazy cloud hasn't moved. It just hangs there, heavy with unspoken meaning. Next, you notice something even subtler: speed. Fast-moving, low-altitude clouds racing above your canoe indicate trade winds. Great for travel, but they also give you a directional cue. Consistent east-to-west movement that matches the prevailing winds of the Pacific. And by watching how high clouds and low clouds move in different directions, navigators could predict changes in weather days before they arrived. One eye on the heavens, the other on the sea. You lean back and stare skyward. Suddenly, it feels like the clouds are moving in layers. A top layer drifting left, a middle layer slowly marching straight ahead, and a bottom layer zipping past like it's late for something. It's a moving sky map, and you're starting to read it. You blink slowly. The light has shifted again. Dusk is settling in. Clouds now turn amber, then peach, then smoky purple. You remember that cloud albedo thing. In this light, color changes mean everything. You start scanning for subtle green or brown beneath clouds near the horizon, just in case they're reflecting a tiny islet below. And if you were Polynesian, this would be your normal. Your cloud watching wouldn't be a casual glance up. It'd be a studied, reverent habit, a quiet ritual of connection. Now, for the scientific cherry on top, there are records of navigators using cloud shadows on the ocean's surface to estimate both distance and location of unseen islands. Yes, shadows. They'd note the angle and length of a dark patch on the water, mentally triangulating position like some kind of sleep-deprived sea trigonometry. You smile. People still debate if this was precise estimation or just trial and error layered over experience. But either way, it got them where they needed to go. You exhale and let your head rest against the side of the canoe. The clouds overhead begin to thin, making way for stars again. But now, you know more. You've added another sense to your growing toolkit. You're not just watching the sky anymore, you're listening to it. And somewhere in those drifting patterns above, you swear you hear a gentle voice say, "You're getting close." The clouds part just enough to reveal a sky you almost recognize, but not quite. The stars above aren't the familiar ones etched into childhood planetarium trips or printed on classroom posters. No Big Dipper, no Orion's belt. You tilt your head, squinting, trying to map them in your memory. But these aren't Western constellations. They're older, stranger, infinitely more poetic. You're entering the realm of Polynesian sky lore, where the stars don't just twinkle passively overhead. They move, they guide, they speak. One of the first to catch your eye is a glowing cluster in the east, Matariki, known elsewhere as the Pleiades. But here, it's more than just a pretty sparkle. Its heliacal rising, that first appearance before dawn after disappearing for weeks, signals the Polynesian New Year. Entire calendars were built around it. Celebrations, planting seasons, even major voyages. You trace its shape with your finger, letting it hover just above the curve of the canoe. If you were a navigator, you'd know exactly where that cluster rises and sets on the horizon, and you'd use it to fix your bearing for hours, sometimes days. Here's your science fact for the night. Polynesian wayfinders used over 150 stars, each with known rising and setting points. This celestial grid system, known as the star compass, divides the horizon into segments. When a star rises from a specific segment, it indicates a direction. You keep the canoe aligned, so the star stays where it should, say, off the starboard side, and that means you're staying on course. It's shockingly elegant. And the kicker? It's internalized. There's no physical compass, no sextant, just years of memorization and constant sky scanning. You adjust your position and spot a bright orange dot near the zenith. Betelgeuse, maybe. But Polynesian traditions called it kaulua, associated with seasonal rains. You smile. This isn't astronomy, it's story. Every star has a personality, a job, a season, a warning. A gentle voice from the stern hums a chant. You listen closely. It's not a song about love or longing, it's a navigation chant. A sequence of star names in rising order, one after another, like a cosmic cheat sheet, sung in rhythm. It's mesmerizing. And here's the quirky tidbit. In some Polynesian traditions, certain constellations were actually interpreted as canoes themselves, Te Waka, or Tamarareti, being one of the most poetic. It stretches across the sky, its stars forming the hull, the outrigger, even the sail. The legend goes that Tamarareti scattered stardust across the heavens to light the path for future travelers. You imagine him sailing the Milky Way, throwing sparkles like breadcrumbs. Scientists still argue whether this poetic star mapping system qualifies as astronomy or mythology. But the line gets blurry. When your life depends on knowing which star rises in which part of the sky at what time of year, is there really a difference? You roll onto your back and breathe in the night air. A soft breeze nudges the canoe ever so slightly. The sky feels so close here. Not like the abstract dome it is in cities, but a curved ceiling just above your head, low enough to reach if only you stretched a little further. You try to memorize one star's movement. You pick Rigel, a bright blue glint in the west, and trace its slow descent toward the edge of the horizon. You blink, then again, and suddenly it's gone. It's not dramatic, just a quiet exit, like it's passed the baton to the next. This rotation is constant, predictable, sacred. You realize now the stars don't just guide you across space, they guide you through time. You settle deeper into the canoe, surrounded by wooden memory, ocean breath, and a sky full of mythic compasses. There are no coordinates here, no glowing arrow on a screen. But you're not lost. You're where ancient minds once dreamed of being, floating under constellations that most of the world has forgotten. But not you. Not tonight. Tonight, you sail by starlight, you shift slightly, and the canoe creaks beneath you. A reminder that time is passing, even when it feels like the ocean has forgotten how to count. There's no clock here, no phone screen glowing numbers, no watch ticking politely on your wrist. But you still feel time moving, not in hours and minutes, but in tides, in heat, in the salt that crystallizes slowly on your skin. Polynesian navigators told time with their bodies, with the sun on their faces, the stars above their heads, and the ocean lapping against the hull. You begin to feel it too. The sea doesn't need numbers. It speaks in pulses. The morning swell was sharper, but now it's mellowed, longer, rounder, more rhythmic. You've slipped into what navigators might call the second breath of the day, a kind of maritime siesta zone, where the wind shifts ever so slightly and the ocean stops rushing, choosing instead to sway. You lift your hand and watch water drip from your fingers. The sunlight catches each droplet like glass beads. This moment feels slow, soft, and yet the canoe is still moving. Always moving. Here's your science fact. Your body contains circadian rhythms, internal clocks tied to light and dark cycles. But spend enough time at sea and you start to sync with ultradian rhythms too. Shorter cycles of alertness and drowsiness, temperature and energy. Traditional wayfinders, without realizing it, were aligning not just to the sun and stars, but to these deep biological pulses. You sit upright and place a hand gently on the deck. The wood is warm now, soaked with sunlight. That tells you it's late afternoon, probably third quarter of the day. The angle of the light, the way your shadow falls just off the starboard side, confirms it. You grin. You didn't check the time, but you know it. There's a fringe tradition, rarely spoken of but whispered among master navigators, that says some could feel the exact hour by placing their hands in the water, not by temperature, by the subtle resistance of the current, the tension in the swell, like reading Braille from the sea. Scientists still argue whether this was myth, muscle memory, or a mix of both. You reach over the side again. The water pulls back, lazy and warm, like the ocean itself is tired. Your skin has started to wrinkle, not unpleasantly, but like driftwood softened by time. Even your body, it seems, is keeping count. Nearby, someone adjusts the sails slightly, not to change course, but to match rhythm. Because here, navigation isn't just about where, it's about when. You think of time differently now. On land, time is vertical, marked by calendars, meetings, appointments. But at sea, time is horizontal. It stretches out beside you, rolls beneath you. It doesn't beep or chime. It breathes. The canoe shudders ever so slightly. You look ahead. Ah, a new pattern of waves is coming in. Possibly a tide shift. That too is time passing. Tides speak in a voice that takes 6 hours to form a sentence. You're learning to listen. And here's something delightfully poetic. To close this loop, in some island cultures, the word for past is the same as behind, and future is in front. But the twist, they walk backward into the future. The idea being, you face your past because it's known. You turn your back on the future because it's unknowable. Tonight, you're walking backward into the horizon, and yet you're not anxious, not worried, because the sea keeps time for you. The canoe remembers your pace. The stars remember your direction. You close your eyes and let your heartbeat join the rhythm of the swell. You're no longer counting hours. You are the hour. Night falls and suddenly the water beneath you is alive. It starts as a flicker, just a soft shimmer near the edge of the canoe. Then another, trailing behind, like someone dipped a glow stick in the sea. You lean over cautiously, and there it is. A ribbon of light, swirling in your wake. Not from a lantern, not from the moon. This is bioluminescence. You watch, transfixed, as your fingers disturb the surface and tiny organisms light up in response. Sparkling trails that vanish almost as quickly as they form. You laugh softly. It's like painting with your fingertips in a galaxy of liquid stars. Polynesian voyagers knew this glow well. To them, it wasn't a novelty. It was another form of ocean intelligence. Some even said glowing seas marked deep currents or signaled shifts in water temperature. And while they may not have known the term dinoflagellates, they understood the behavior. They'd see these sparkles and know what kind of water they were moving through. Calm, nutrient-rich, coastal or open ocean. Here's your science fact. Bioluminescence in the ocean is typically caused by plankton, tiny marine organisms that emit light when agitated. This reaction is a defense mechanism meant to startle predators or attract something larger to eat whatever's chasing them. Nature's glowing tattletale. But lying here, that's the last thing on your mind. It just feels magical, ethereal, like the universe forgot to turn off its fairy lights. You swirl the water again and catch a brighter burst, almost like a tiny firework. For a moment, you wonder if the canoe itself is glowing, the lines of lashings and wood outlined in neon. It isn't, of course, but the illusion is perfect. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some old stories, navigators believed bioluminescent creatures were the eyes of the ocean, watching, remembering, guiding. You'd sail through glowing waters and feel you were being measured, not judged, but gently observed, cared for, like the sea was taking attendance. You smile because right now it doesn't feel far-fetched. And then something even stranger happens. You notice a pattern. The glow is brighter on one side of the canoe. Why? You lean further. Maybe it's current velocity, maybe the direction of your movement. But some ancient navigators believed this brightness could help you steer. More glow behind you? You're accelerating. More on the port side, you might be drifting slightly starboard. Scientists still argue whether anyone could reliably use plankton light for navigation, but whether the glow was a compass or just a beautiful distraction, it meant something. It still does. You settle back, eyes wide open despite the darkness. The sky above is starry again, but now the ocean below mirrors it, a universe reflected in ripples and flickers. You imagine drifting through this glowing sea for hours, days even. It feels like a dream, like the ocean is telling you bedtime stories in Morse code made of light. Then, just off the bow, something moves, fast and fluid. A fish, maybe. It cuts through the water and ignites a streak of bioluminescence behind it, like a comet tail. You exhale audibly. It's impossible to explain how beautiful that is. But in this silence, explanation isn't needed. You feel your breath sink with the movement of the canoe again. The stars above, the glowing sea below. A sandwich of infinity with you in the middle. You whisper to no one, "I could stay here forever." And if the ocean answers, it does so softly, with one more shimmer in the dark. You lift your chin and sniff the air. It's not the scent of salt or the sting of brine. That's always there. No, this is different. Faint, but distinct. A shift in the breeze, something warmer, earthier. The ghost of vegetation, bird droppings. A whiff of volcanic stone warming under the sun. You blink. You're not hallucinating. You're smelling land. Polynesian navigators knew that long before an island appeared on the horizon, it made its presence known on the breeze. At sea, where sensory input is minimal and monotony reigns, even the slightest change in smell matters. That faint sweetness in the air could be blossoms, that musty edge, seabirds nesting, a hint of charcoal. Someone's cooking over fire. Very close. You shift to your knees, close your eyes, and inhale again. There it is. The ocean still dominates, but now the background has changed. The scent profile is more complex, like the sea is mixing in memory with its usual recipe. Here's your science fact. Air carries scent molecules across vast distances. Over open ocean, with no buildings, trees, or cars to trap or distort them, those molecules travel undisturbed. Under the right wind conditions, humans can smell land from over 12 miles away. Dolphins, by the way, are even better at it. But you're doing pretty well for a land mammal without fins. And that shift in the wind, it's not just odor, it's temperature too. You feel a subtle change, less cool, slightly humid, maybe from coastal vegetation or shallow reefs warming under the sun. You're entering a new microclimate, even if you can't see it. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some traditions claim experienced navigators could not only smell land, but identify which island it was. Oh, that's the scent of breadfruit on Taha'a, or that's the mossy edge of Rarotonga. Scientists still argue whether that level of olfactory memory is biologically plausible or just poetic storytelling. But even if it is a myth, it's one rooted in truth. Memory and scent are tightly linked in the brain. You remember something similar, maybe not on the open ocean, but close. A breeze carrying the smell of rain before it falls, the hint of cinnamon from a bakery half a block away, the chemical twang of a swimming pool long before you see the water. Your brain is a scent archive. You look to the crew. No one says anything, but they know it too. Shoulders shift, eyes brighten. The canoe feels like it's leaning forward with quiet urgency. Someone ties their hair back, as if preparing to meet an old friend. You touch the wood at your side. It's warmer now, or maybe you're imagining it. But everything feels like it's leaning toward arrival. Then you hear something. At first, you think it's wind. But then, no, that's different. It's the faintest echo of surf. A soft crash, distant and hollow, like someone clapping slowly inside a stone cathedral. It rides on the wind like a whisper. You are, without question, approaching land. Still, the sky remains unchanged. The ocean stretches endlessly. Nothing has risen on the horizon. But your nose and ears tell you a story the eyes haven't caught up to yet. You exhale through your nose, slowly. Even that smells different now. Maybe you're imagining it. Maybe not. But here, with nothing but stars above and sea around, your senses become instruments. They sharpen, expand. Remember, soon the island will reveal itself, a green shape against a rising sun. But tonight, it's still a rumor, a scent, a feeling, and somehow enough. The wind shifts again, and the island's scent grows stronger. But along with it comes something less fragrant, the distant echo of skepticism. You're not alone on this ocean, not historically, not scientifically, because for centuries, Western explorers and scholars scoffed at the idea that Polynesians had reached far-flung islands using only the stars, waves, birds, and breeze. Impossible, they said. They must have drifted accidentally. Primitive, they claimed. Surely they stumbled into Hawaii by dumb luck. Unproven, they insisted. There's no written record. You lean back and sigh. Ah, the familiar chorus of underestimation. The truth, of course, is more complicated and more impressive. Polynesian navigators were crossing thousands of miles of open ocean long before the Vikings sailed to Greenland, before Columbus ever misplaced the Bahamas. Their voyages weren't accidents. They were intentional, repeated, recorded in memory, chant, and canoe. Here's your science fact. Recent studies in linguistics, archaeology, and genetics all support what navigators have long said, that Polynesian settlement followed deliberate eastward migration from Southeast Asia, across Micronesia, into the Central Pacific, and ultimately to islands like Rapa Nui, Aotearoa, and yes, Hawaii. But for a long time, the Western academic world didn't want to hear it. Even Captain Cook, who famously sailed with the Tahitian navigator named Tupaia, didn't fully grasp the extent of what he was witnessing. Tupaia could draw maps of islands Cook hadn't even heard of. He knew routes between them, distances, bird migrations, ocean temperatures, currents, all encoded in oral tradition and experience. Cook admired him, but still underestimated what that knowledge represented. The fringe tidbit. Some early European cartographers even erased Polynesian landings from their maps. Whether out of disbelief, ignorance, or ego, they couldn't reconcile these natives with the sophistication their voyages clearly demonstrated. Scientists still argue whether this erasure was deliberate colonial bias or just the blind spots of empire. You look down at the deck beneath you. Imagine how many voyages it would take to map the Pacific by memory. How many generations of passing knowledge from mouth to ear. Never writing it down, never letting it fade. And yet, somehow, modern science is just now catching up to what was once dismissed. You shift and glance over the side. The water's still glowing faintly. The stars are still your compass. And yet, here you are, carrying a weight, not just of history, but of recovery. Because this isn't just about forgotten knowledge. It's about ignored knowledge. You remember a story you read once? When Nainoa Thompson, a modern Hawaiian navigator, sailed the Hokulea, a traditional canoe, on a voyage without instruments, the academic world was stunned. He used only the ancient techniques passed down through training with Micronesian master Maupiai Lug. The journey proved something that had always been true, but finally became visible. You smile, because science isn't just about discovering new things. Sometimes it's about realizing old things were right all along. You listen to the water slap gently against the hull, a rhythm older than textbooks, and you feel it now. This isn't a correction, it's a reunion. Tonight, you sail, not just across the ocean, but through time, bridging gaps, quieting doubts, honoring knowledge that was never gone, just waiting to be heard again. The stars are starting to fade, one by one, as dawn peels gently across the horizon. But even as the sky brightens, the canoe grows quieter, not out of exhaustion, but reverence. There's a small gathering at the bow now. Someone's unrolling a bundle of tapa cloth. Another lights a piece of dried coconut husk. You inch forward, curious, but not wanting to intrude. This isn't about navigation anymore. This is about ceremony. Voyaging in Polynesia was never just travel. It was spiritual, sacred. Every journey began and ended with ritual, chants to ask permission, offerings for safe passage, thanks given not just to ancestors, but to the ocean itself, as if it were alive, aware and always listening. You settle in beside a coil of rope, keeping your distance but leaning just close enough to hear the chant. It's low and rhythmic, more breath than melody, but it vibrates through the wood, through your ribs. It's a call and response. One voice begins, a line of history perhaps. Another responds, not in translation, but in continuation. A thread stretching backward, beyond the names of the people present. You feel it tighten, like the canoe is being pulled gently by memory. Here's your science fact. Rituals like these aren't just cultural traditions. They reinforce group cohesion, reduce stress, and activate parts of the brain associated with long-term memory and emotional regulation. In other words, the ceremony isn't a formality. It's a tool for survival, for mental clarity, for resilience at sea. Someone, places a carved bowl near the mast. You recognize the shape. It's for awa, a ceremonial drink made from the kava root, slightly bitter, mildly sedative, a way to mark transitions, departures, arrivals, revelations. You can smell its earthy sting even from where you sit. And now, the quirky tidbit. On some islands, it's believed that a canoe has a soul. Not a metaphorical one, a literal spirit. Before a voyage, navigators would wake the canoe with a chant, and after arriving safely, they'd put it to sleep. Scientists still debate whether these beliefs evolved for psychological reasons, personifying the vessel to bond with it emotionally, or if it represents an older, animistic worldview that science can't quite classify. You glance around. Everyone's still quiet, but there's a shift now, a collective exhale. The chant slows. The fire flickers out. The tapa cloth is gently folded. It's not over. It's simply marked. The sea has heard them and answered. You lie back and stare at the newly pale sky. The stars are gone, but the memory of them lingers like warmth on the skin after sun has passed. You think about all the times you rushed from one place to another, checking clocks and schedules. And yet here, arrival isn't measured by time. It's measured by readiness. When the body, the canoe, the sky, and the soul all agree, we are here. You close your eyes, still breathing in the faint scent of our root, and let your mind drift. Because this part of the voyage isn't about movement, it's about meaning. The sun is almost up now. Just a pink smudge bleeding into the ocean's edge. Still no land in sight. But you're close. You can feel it. The way your teeth feel a storm in the bones before it hits. Then someone speaks. Not loud, not urgent, just one word. A name, maybe, an island. Everyone looks forward. You're not the first to reach this moment. Others came before. Navigators now woven into chants, maps, bloodlines. But who exactly reached this part of the Pacific first? Now you're entering one of the ocean's favorite arguments. Because while the canoe knows where it's going, history doesn't always. The debate over who got there first has swirled through labs, conference halls, and research vessels for decades. Was it the Marquesas before Hawaii? Did Tahitians seed New Zealand? And here's the big one, did Polynesians reach the Americas before Columbus? Here's your science fact. A 2020 study found genetic markers in indigenous populations of South America that overlap with Polynesian ancestry, specifically in pre-Columbian samples. This suggests contact before European arrival, likely around 1200 CE. Sweet potatoes, native to South America, were cultivated across Polynesia well before European colonization, providing further evidence of a two-way connection. And yet, some scholars remain cautious, citing sample sizes, trade theory, and maritime feasibility. You chuckle softly. It's the academic version of two kids fighting over who touched the door first. But the stakes here aren't just bragging rights. They're about acknowledging that Polynesian navigators weren't passive drifters. They were seafarers, explorers, scientists in canoes. And here's your fringe tidbit. Some oral histories, especially from Rapa Nui, Easter Island, describe travelers who came from the rising sun, not just the West. Could that be South Americans? Could they have made it to Polynesia as well? Scientists still argue whether these tales are metaphor, memory, or misinterpretation. But the data gets murkier the deeper you dive. You imagine ancient ships passing in fog, leaving only whispers behind. You sit up slightly, adjusting to the canoe's rhythm. You're gliding with purpose now. No more drifting. The navigator at the helm watches the horizon like it owes them something. You follow their gaze, and yes, maybe, just maybe, a faint smudge rises from the water. Not cloud, not dream, but land. It's fitting, you think, that this part of the journey ends in mystery. The island is real, but the timeline, the who, the how, the first foot on the beach, still foggy, still unfolding, because the Pacific doesn't give up its secrets easily. It offers them in fragments, a bird's flight, a fading chant, a seed carried in the gut of a storm. And maybe that's the point, that no one discovered anything here. They remembered it, reached out across the ocean with trust and technique and hope stitched into the sails. You smile as the shape on the horizon sharpens. Whether it's your first arrival or your 1000th reincarnation, it feels like home. Not because you found it, but because you earned it. The shape ahead sharpens into certainty. What was once a whisper on the horizon becomes a solid silhouette. Lush, rising hills, crowned with morning mist. The faint line of coconut palms catching the first golden spill of sunlight. The island is here. You are here. And yet, there's no rush, no cheering crew, no anchor dropped with dramatic flourish. The canoe glides forward in silence, as if it too needs a moment to believe it. You inhale deeply. The scent of earth is strong now. Moist vegetation, distant flowers, the tang of tide pools warming in dawn's light. A different kind of ocean breath, one with roots. But this arrival? It isn't just physical. It's spiritual, emotional, cognitive. You haven't simply crossed space, you've crossed understanding. You began this voyage with stars and questions. You end it with something else. Recognition. And not just recognition of land, but of the journey itself. The canoe was never merely transport. It was metaphor, meditation, memory. You didn't just ride across the sea. You became part of its rhythm. The navigator raises a hand. Everyone stills. It's time for the last ritual, a short chant, gentle, almost whispered, not a declaration of victory, but a gesture of respect for the sea, for the land, for the ancestors who sailed this route long before charts or satellite maps or doubting textbooks. Here's your science fact. Arrival rituals like these aren't just tradition, they're anchoring tools. They mark transitions in cognitive state, closing one chapter and opening another. Rituals regulate cortisol, calm the nervous system, and promote memory encoding. So yes, chanting as you land is also a neuroscience hack. You step carefully onto the sand. It's warm, soft. Your legs wobble a bit, unsure after so long afloat. But the island receives you gently, like it's been expecting you, like it left the door slightly open, just in case. You run your fingers through the grains. Volcanic, coarse, dotted with shell fragments. You feel every speck. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some navigators would eat a pinch of sand upon arrival, not out of hunger, but as a symbolic gesture, to taste the truth, to anchor the memory, to say, yes, I was here. You consider doing the same. But maybe you'll just pocket a small piece instead. And now, the scientific debate that drifts behind you like your canoe's wake. Was this knowledge ever really lost? Or was it simply ignored, suppressed, misfiled by those who didn't know how to listen? Scientists still argue whether the full depth of Polynesian navigation can ever be reclaimed. The chants fade, the elders pass, the canoes rot. But tonight, you've heard their echo. You've followed the swell, read the stars, felt the breath of birds and the stories in the clouds. You didn't just arrive, you returned. The waves hush behind you now, fading into soft pulses against the sand. The sky is fully lit, but not harsh, just warm, gentle. Pale blues blending into honeyed gold, like the sea itself is exhaling after holding its breath all night. You sit quietly on the edge of the shore, toes in the water, letting the foam kiss your ankles. The canoe rests a few meters back, still watching you, like a guardian that never fully lets go. And you're not tired, not really, just still. Everything feels slower now. The air moves gently over your skin. Even your thoughts unfold like cloth drying in the sun. Soft, wide, and almost too quiet to disturb. The chants are gone, but you can still feel them. The rhythm of waves, the memory of stars, the weight of the journey, all wrapped around you like a woven mat of stories. You breathe in through your nose. There's that scent again. Green leaves, warm rock, salt air. But now it smells like safety, like return. No need to move, no need to plan. Just let the island hold you the way the ocean did. You're allowed to rest here. You deserve to rest here. The canoe, the night sky, the songs. They're all part of you now. And wherever you go next, those currents will ripple behind your steps. So close your eyes, let your shoulders drop, let your jaw unclench. Let the hush of surf carry you into that liminal space between wake and dream. You've reached your destination. There's nowhere else you need to be. Not right now, not tonight.